Yo, what is up guys? Del Boy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So a quick preview and prediction for Daniel Dubois versus Joe Joyce. This fight goes down on the 28th of November. It is going to be for the British, Commonwealth and European heavyweight titles. And in the UK, this fight is on regular BT Sports, no pay-per-view. So obviously that is great news for us boxing fans in the UK. And all in all, this really is a fascinating fight. And more than likely this fight's going to be entertaining no matter what way it goes. A really intriguing fight in my opinion, and a fight we need in the heavyweight division. Right now there's a fair few prospects coming up in the heavyweight division, but a lot of these other upcoming heavyweights really aren't fighting each other right now, so I commend Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce for taking this fight. Going to be great for us boxing fans in the UK and, you know, around the world in general. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this fight. But anyway, on to the tale of the tape. We shall start with Daniel Dubois. He's got a perfect record of 15-0, 14 of those 15 wins coming by way of knockout. Joe Joyce has a record of 11-0 with 10 knockouts. Daniel Dubois, he is listed as 6'5" with a 78-inch reach, whereas Joe Joyce is listed as 6'6" with an 80-inch reach. Both guys are orthodox fighters. Daniel Dubois is only 23 years old, whereas Joe Joyce is 35 years old. So going from the tail of the tape, obviously Joe Joyce is the older man, but that comes with experience. As a pro, he's not had as many fights, but he's fought better competition. You know, guys like Bryant Jennings are far better than anybody Daniel Dubois fought. Also, Joe Joyce has that extensive amateur background. Of course, he is the Olympic silver medalist from Rio 2016. And in the amateurs, he beat some really good fighters. So in terms of experience, Joe Joyce certainly has the edge. And also he is the taller, longer man. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage and a 1-inch height advantage. How that plays a factor on fight night, I will discuss a little bit later. But yeah, that's the brief tale of a tape. In regards to the stylistic clash, what guy needs to do what, let's get into it. Joe Joyce. To me, Joe Joyce is interesting going into this fight. He's actually being trained by Ismael Salas going into this fight. Now, Joe Joyce, as a pro, has had a number of trainers, but his first trainer was actually Ismael Salas. He actually left Ismael Salas to go to, I believe, Abel Sanchez. And when he was with Ismael Salas, when he turned pro, Joe Joyce was a guy who actually moved a fair bit. As an amateur, Joe Joyce was a seek and destroy type fighter, liked to come forward on the front foot and basically drown you in a volume of punches. But when he turned pro with Ismael Salas, he was moving a lot more than we were used to seeing in the amateurs. I mean, we saw that in the fight with Ian Lewison, his pro debut, fights against Donny Palmer, you know, boxing from the outside, moving, using the jab and countering quite effectively. And yeah, that was a stylistic change for Joe Joyce. And going into this fight, I actually think that style of Ismael Salas might suit him a little bit better. I don't think it's a wise decision to come onto Daniel Dubois, meet him head first in the centre of the ring. I don't think that's a wise idea for Joe Joyce. I'm not saying he can't win the fight that way, because let's say, for example, he does that, he soaks up the punishment, and then takes Dubois into deep waters. Yeah, hypothetically, I think Joe Joyce can win that way, and I wouldn't necessarily be shocked, but I think that style would give Daniel Dubois a greater chance of winning this fight. On the front foot, I don't think Joe Joyce necessarily has a great defence. I mean, we saw that in the Bermane-Stiverne fight, for example. Yeah, Joe Joyce pretty much dominated that fight, but he was getting caught by hard overhand rights coming in by a slow as held Bermane-Stiverne, a shot Bermane-Stiverne. Stiverne was still catching Joe Joyce coming in. And also in the Bryant Jennings fight, you know, Jennings was kind of being a bit more cute, a bit more awkward, and Joyce was coming forwards trying to walk him down. But Jennings in that fight was quite effective at countering Joe Joyce coming forwards and also working the body of Joe Joyce. He actually hurt Joe Joyce to the body in that fight. So coming forwards, to me, Joyce could be a lot more vulnerable to Dubois' punching power and his underrated timing. So for me, I would actually like to see Joe Joyce switch it up a little bit going into this fight. Fight how he used to fight under Ismail Salas first time around, using a bit more movement, using his legs, using his height and reach. We've not really seen Daniel Dubois chase the fight against a big dude like a Joe Joyce, a guy who can box a bit, a guy who can move a bit. And when Joe Joyce does box on the back foot, he still maintains great punch output and he's very busy. So I think it'll be interesting to see Dubois actually contend with that style. I think that might be a better way to go for Joe Joyce going into this bout. Again, like I said, he could actually resume to type and be aggressive, come forwards, but to me that gives Dubois a better chance of winning this fight. Just how I see it. I don't think you can really stand in front of Dubois and duke it out with him. I think it's a big risk. I certainly believe in Dubois' power to an extent. Obviously, Dubois has not fought a high level of competition, so while we don't really know how hard Dubois really hits on a world level, I certainly think he hits hard enough. And I wouldn't want to take a chance and trade with this guy. So I want to see Joe Joyce actually box and move a little bit more in this fight. You know, try and make Dubois take the lead, make Dubois come forwards, take the risks, and try to pick him off from range. And as the fight goes on, depending on how it goes, then change up your tactics. If Dubois then starts to tire down the stretch, then Joe Joyce can start to impose himself, impose his physicality, impose his size, and then try to walk Dubois down. I think it would be a mistake for Joyce to actually try to walk down Dubois from round one. I think that's a big mistake when Dubois is fresh and not depleted. So yeah, I'm interested to see the game plan of Ismail Salas going into this fight. What fight will he have Joe Joyce fighting? I certainly believe it's more beneficial to fight on the back foot, certainly to start this fight, and then basically adjust as needed. You know, if the back foot game isn't working and Dubois is walking you down and doing better, Joe Joyce can always revert the type and come forwards. So that's how I would start if I was Joe Joyce, and basically go from there, see how it plays out in the fight, and make your adjustments. And ultimately, I think Joe Joyce needs to test the heart and gas tank of Daniel Dubois. Obviously, if he moves around, he can't be too fleet of foot. He can't be too negative. He needs to make Dubois realise he's in there with a big dude. He needs to make Dubois respect his power in this fight and make him realise that he's in with something that he's not seen before. So yeah, ultimately, Joe Joyce needs to really impose himself, impose his experience, and then impose his will on Daniel Dubois. He needs to really test Dubois' heart, his gas tank, his chin. And yeah, he needs to ask questions that we've not seen asked before, essentially. As for Daniel Dubois, you know, this is a big step up for him. So far in his pro career, he's not fought anybody on the level of a Joe Joyce. I mean, his best opponent to date is Nathan Gorman, so of course, this is a massive step up for Daniel Dubois. But, you know, Daniel Dubois, in my opinion, is a really good heavyweight prospect. One of the best prospects in the heavyweight division. I really like his jab. When he uses that jab, it's a ramrod jab, a spearing jab. It's almost a power punch in itself. And that punch in this fight, in my opinion, could be key to domesticate Joe Joyce. Dubois needs to be active with that jab. Use that jab to really either close the distance against Joe Joyce and walk him down, or also, you know, stop Joe Joyce in his tracks if Joyce is coming forwards. That jab from Dubois is going to be extremely key in this fight. I actually think his jab is better than Joe Joyce's. Joyce's jab is a little more consistent. He throws it a lot more. But in terms of the quality of the actual punch, I think Dubois' jab is better. The only thing with Dubois, his jab isn't as varied as Joe Joyce's. Joyce can pull with the jab, he can ramrod it. He does vary the jab from body to head, but to me the technically better jab comes from Dubois, and I think that punch is extremely key for him going forwards. Also, Dubois' body work. I believe Dubois can be a really good body puncher. He's not a consistent body puncher, but I've seen him do it in enough fights to say that he can do it. The Kevin Johnson fight, for example, I actually felt he was working the body relatively well at times, but he just didn't do it enough. Also in the Razvan Kajanu fight, the finish in that fight was set up by a left hook to the body. You know, Dubois can definitely punch to the body, especially with that left hook. And I've got a feeling that maybe Joe Joyce is susceptible to that body. Obviously, we saw Bryant Jennings hurt Joe Joyce to the body in the first round of their fight. And Bryant Jennings really isn't a big puncher. And he still managed to hurt Joyce to the body. So if I was Dubois, I would be looking at that and trying to capitalise on that, you know. Ultimately, the bodywork of Dubois, once again, is going to be key to either slowing Joyce down while he's moving and boxing and moving, or also slow him down when he's coming forwards. Take the gas tank out of Joe Joyce. Joyce, of course, has one of the best gas tanks in the heavyweight division. His work rate is something special. Either way he fights, whether it's back foot or front foot, Joyce always maintains a really good work rate. He's got a great gas tank, and Dubois' bodywork in this fight needs to be more consistent than we've ever seen it in any fight, in my opinion. Certainly, if it's a long fight, he needs to really be working that body to try and slow down Joyce. And Dubois needs to pick his moments, keep a cool head. He's very inexperienced, so that could be his undoing in this fight, but he needs to keep a cool head, work behind that ramrod jab, work the body, and just keep it tight, keep it simple, and slowly try to break down Joe Joyce. And in this fight, he really needs to be cautious of when he picks his moments and when not to. I don't think it will be the end of the world for Dubois to basically trade with Joe Joyce. One thing I've noticed about Dubois, he can get caught in the exchanges, don't get me wrong. We saw that against Eric Lartey, but I think he maintains quite good punch technique when he's exchanging, whereas Joe Joyce, when he throws combinations, a lot of his shots are loose, sometimes a little ragged, but he doesn't always throw combinations in a technically great manner when he throws punches. So I would actually encourage Dubois to trade with Joe Joyce in spots. Don't make a habit of it, because if you can't get him out of there, you could gas out. But in spots, I think Dubois needs to trade with Joe Joyce. I think he's got a better punch technique. I actually believe he's got quicker hands, better accuracy, and he's got quite good timing as well in the exchanges, especially with that right hand and even left hook to the body as well. He can dip down, change levels, and really kind of, get a bit more creative than Joe Joyce. So in the exchanges, I'm really keen to see what Dubois does. He can't shy away from those moments. He needs to pick his spots, but at the same time, he can't necessarily go gung-ho and trade with Joe Joyce every single time that it comes up, kind of thing. But ultimately, this is a really interesting fight. A lot of questions are going to be asked of both men, and it's going to be interesting to see what answers they provide. How are both guys' chins? We saw Richard Lartey catch Daniel Dubois flush. I wouldn't say he rocked him, but Daniel Dubois certainly felt it. Can Dubois take power from Joe Joyce? Can he take the volume of Joe Joyce? Has he got the gas tank to compete with Joe Joyce? Can Joe Joyce compete with a young prime heavyweight like Dubois? Is Joe Joyce too old now at 35 years old? He was in the amateurs a long, long time. This fight for Joe Joyce in particular, if he loses this fight at 35 years old, losing basically at domestic level, it could be a hard way back. So it's a really interesting one. It really is. But ultimately, while I think this fight's going to be competitive, however long it lasts, if you ask me who I'm favouring in this fight, I would go with Daniel Dubois. Ultimately, I believe overall he's got the highest ceiling. He's the promotional A-side, so in the event of a close fight, you would imagine Dubois is going to get the rub of the green. I believe Dubois certainly has better punch technique, and while I can't prove it, while it's based on assumption, I believe Daniel Dubois is the harder puncher, and ultimately Joe Joyce's defense in this fight could actually let him down. I'm not saying Dubois has a great defense, but for example, if these guys were to engage in a shootout, I would favour Dubois. And ultimately I think Dubois' power is going to see him through in this fight. Basically, I think he'll get like a mid-round to late-round stoppage, but I think it's going to be very competitive. I wouldn't be shocked to see it go the other way. This really is a massive test for Daniel Dubois. For all we know, this guy isn't ready, this guy's not the real deal. I'm basing this off assumptions, basically. So, I'm going with Dubois by a knockout, mid to late rounds. I'm not really convinced when it happens, to be honest, but Dubois by stoppage, really, really good fight. Credit to Frank Warren for getting this one on regular BT Sports. Really interesting one as far as I'm concerned. And the winner of this fight certainly is in a great position for 2021. The winner of this fight is going to push on to contend at world level, basically. So this is going to be interesting. Anyway, share your thoughts below. I'm intrigued to hear your predictions. Who have you guys got winning this fight, and how do you have them winning? Peace.